How's it going, everyone? Smalls here, bringing you another episode of Small Talk. Be sure to check us out at FTN Bets and FTNBets.com. While you're over there, go check out my injury tracker on FTN Fantasy. It's going to be your BFF this season while you're setting your lineups. And go check out my new podcast, Off Topic. Hit subscribe so you don't miss any of those episodes. Episode 2 is coming out today. Be sure to check it out. And as always, check out our sponsors at Tipico Sportsbook. Download their app and they will match 100% of your first deposit up to $750 this week. As normal, I'm going to bring on a guest and we're going to chop it up about the Lions and the NFC North. Stay on brand with Aaron Rodgers. And as always, more of those NFL futures that you love. Let's get it started. Joining me now is not Kyler Murray, but Kyle Murray from FTN. I told him I wasn't going to make a Kyler Murray joke, and it was the first thing out of my mouth. How's it going?
Yeah, you didn't really take too long to do that one, but I get it a lot, so it's fine. I've totally kind of embraced it at this point, but I'm doing great. I'm thrilled to be on your show. I've watched a lot of the episodes previous, and you've had a lot of great guests, so I'm stepping into some big shoes, but I'm excited.
It's going to be very exciting, and we're going to talk about and I don't know if you told people this, but I'm going to tell everyone. I'm even like in your colors. We're going to talk about the Lions.
Yeah, so my favorite thing in the world to talk about, a Detroit sports team, the Lions. So yeah, I get a lot of questions about Michigan sports, being from Michigan, and the Lions always come up, and it's never fun.
I will tell you, though, I'm a little bit higher on the Lions. And I think the Lions deserve to get a little bit more credit than they're getting. I think that their O-line is a little bit more impressive. Someone that is a little concerning is Dan Campbell. Why don't we start with him? How do we feel about Dan Campbell?
Okay, so it's a little bit of a mixed bag for me. Obviously, being from the area, you get a lot of cool, smaller reports from beat writers that you typically wouldn't get if you didn't live in the state or around the area. Mm-hmm. And I will say it does seem like a lot of the fans around here and a lot of the players do like him. They've taken well to him. However, I've always wanted someone a little bit more analytically minded and strategic, someone you bring in a Cliff Kingsbury. I love that kind of acquisition, Matt Rule, those kind of signings. That's kind of what I was hoping the Lions would do. They didn't do that. They kind of went, in my opinion, it's kind of a stretch to compare the two, but they went in the Tennessee direction. The former player, Mike Vrabel, kind of more of the players kind of coach, motivate them rather than really be the offensive mind that I kind of wanted. So I will say I'll give him credit. He has got a lot of impressive quotes from players and whatnot. However, I will say going from Matt Patricia, who all the players despised, it's kind of hard to not be liked. So I didn't love the hire at first, but I'm still I'm optimistic about it, but cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, I think it'll be good though. At least and being a Giants fan myself, and I always say I'm not going to bring them up, but whatever, what you know. And something about that culture, at least. He might be a little intense about the culture, but I think there is something to bringing back that culture there and something that the players, buy into in a system that they want to play for. So I will give him that. The biting kneecaps and the Lions on the sideline and the helmet is a little much, but we'll see what they're able to do. I did mention I like their O-line. I think there are things to like about this team. Let's talk about the offseason, right? So with the draft, with the offseason, what did you like? What didn't you like?
So I do like some of the signs they made, and I do like the Sewell draft pick. I will say I was kind of hoping they would draft Devontae Smith. I'm just a sucker for offense. That's kind of where I think the NFL. I think that's how you win football games in the NFL. I might be a little bit biased because of my background, being a DFS player and being a sports bettor. A lot of my eyes are on offensive skill position players. So I will say I'm probably a bit biased, but I did love Devontae Smith coming out of college. I did kind of want them to go in that direction, especially after I didn't really expect him to be there for him. So I will say I do like the pick, but it would have been kind of nice to maybe get Smith and then get one of the other tackles later in the draft, like your boy Rashawn Slater. However, I did like that signing. And to your point, I think they do have a very good line. I think it is better than people are kind of saying or giving credit for. So adding on to that offensive line, I think was a good move.
Definitely. And people that have watched, they hear me say this a lot. You look at Jared Goff, because we can't bring up the Lions without talking about him. And I think that Jared Goff is being held back a grade. And I think that Matt Stafford is being forced to jump a grade. So this is how I picture these two. I think that Goff will not have as hard of a time transitioning as everyone thinks. Goff is not a bad football player. I think that he hasn't had an environment that is good for his skill set and the type of player that he is. So is Goff, a fantastic quarterback? No. But I think he's good enough to win games for sure, right? And there's still some skilled players on your – how do you feel about Goff before I go on my Goff rant?
So I like the move. Like it was losing Stafford was heartbreaking as a Lions fan. He's been the quarterback since I've really watched football, and so that was tough. But adding a former first overall pick, a guy that's been to the Super Bowl, I think it was a win-win situation for the Lions because they were going to move Stafford regardless. And now I think Goff gets to kind of play expectation-free football, which in my opinion is the first time he's ever been able to do that. He was a first-round pick. He was expected to perform well. Then he made the Super Bowl, and then from then out, he was expected to perform at the top of his position. So now he gets to kind of free himself from that. So I think that's only good for Jared Goff. Now, I don't really expect him to, be this top 10 quarterback in the NFL or some kind of exciting quarterback. I do think he's more of like a game manager rather than the guy that's going to go and add 3-4 wins to your total. But again, I think being able to come to a spot where the weapons aren't very good, especially from the receivers, I will say, but you can now play expectation-free football, which I think is important.
Yeah, definitely. And DeAndre Swift, right? That's he's awesome. I think, his ADP has been all over the place since the season, but I think that you have Goff coming from McVay's system. And just like you said, it's kind of expectation free. And I think with the O-line and what they have there, they're kind of in a good position, not to win anything crazy. I'm not going to get excited, right? We don't think they're going to win the NFC North, but I think they're going to fight a little bit here. I mean, last season they finished 5-11. The odds right now on this are, they put it at 5.5 games. The over is plus 140. How do we feel about that?
So I'm a sucker for plus money bets. I'll always lean that rather than going for, a minus 200 bet, especially for a bet where you have to, it's got to sit in that account for 3-4 months. Right. I don't really, if I'm going to do that, I kind of want to have, the odds working in my favor. So I don't think they'll win 6 games, or I don't think that they're, the probability of them winning 6 games is overly high, but I would rather take that than under 5.5 at minus 200. That's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, absolutely. We want to win some money here, but I'll take you off the hot seat about the Lions, and we'll talk about the rest of the NFC North. It's the hot topic today, obviously, as Aaron Rodgers, as most of us, maybe not most of us, I expected him to come back. This was not a shocker to me. He was going to play in Green Bay. It's Aaron Rodgers, and this is just kind of, he throws this tantrum every year. It's kind of a cycle. We see this happen, so he's just made the cycle a little bit longer than normal. How do you feel about the Packers and him coming back? They won. They were 13-3 last year. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers coming off of MVP season. I feel like there has to be a little bit of disruption that's going to happen. There has to be something that he's not going to come in and it just be all happy rainbows and unicorns out the butt. There's going to be something that gets a little that gets disrupted. How are we feeling about the Packers?
Yeah, I mean, there always is something, right? There's always an obstacle. I will say last year, it kind of felt like they had some stuff in their way with the relationship between LaFleur and Rodgers. It didn't really, from all the reports, it didn't sound like it was, peachy between those two. And obviously, he had a great year. The Packers had a great year. Obviously, when you win the MVP, you're having a pretty stellar year. So, I think they're probably the favorite to win the NFC North now. I do think I'm really high on Minnesota this year. So I do think it'll be kind of a 2-leg battle between those two. But yeah, tough not to like.
I'm very high on the Bears this season. I think the Bears are a little sneaky this season with having the change. It depends though, right? It depends what we're going to do with Dalton. But with, Justin Fields, since we're on the topic, he's 6.5 to 1 to win Offensive Rookie of the Year. I kind of like it. I don't hate it at all. I actually also like it over Trey Lance at the same odds there. Najee Harris is probably the only other one that I'm a fan of at 5.5 to 1. But Justin Fields, if he comes in and the Bears don't bear, which I can't promise that that's going to happen because we see it every single year, but I like if Dalton is out by week 3, week 4, there's no reason this guy can't take off. He's got everything he needs. The Bears have one of those, most well-rounded rosters. They get looked over a little bit up there with Washington and the Browns. But how do you feel about the Bears? Justin Fields. You have to watch a lot of games against these teams.
Yeah. So I like Fields. I think he's a really good quarterback. I think it could be a good fit. I like the weapons that he's going to have there with Robinson and Mooney, obviously Montgomery out of the backfield. So I think that's a pretty good spot for him. I will say in terms of the betting market for Rookie of the Year over there at plus, was it 650? He's the same odds as Trey Lance. I would probably say Fields has a better chance at getting in there earlier. At least the probability of him starting earlier in the year is probably higher than with Trey Lance. But I will say it's a bit weird. Like a guy like Zach Wilson, who, I guess we can all kind of say, okay, it's going to be a quarterback as rookie. That's just typically how it is. Zach Wilson at plus 900, I'm pretty sure he's going to start week 1. I can't say the same about Fields and Lance.
Right.
So that's kind of how I feel about that betting market.
I can't argue with you on that. I think, and also before, it's funny, I've had like a crazy day, and one of the things I saw in between switching recording off topic in this show is again, they came out and said we have one starter, it's Jimmy G, and Trey Lance is quarterback 2. So they're really going to ride this out, and it'll be interesting. I think that, Trey Lance might see that bench longer than we think, bearing injury should, Jimmy G get hurt, which we know his history is still something possible that could happen. But the plus 900 on Wilson is interesting. I'm not as high on him. I got a little nervous. I panicked, and I did draft him as my QB1 in one of my leagues, but I tend to go 0 QB. So I hope that is the case. And I think the Bears, though, they're just in a good position this year. Yeah. Especially with Mooney. Mooney is a nice value right now, too, in a lot of these drafts. I want to switch back to the Packers a little bit, talking about Aaron Rodgers, since that is the flavor of the day. He's coming off a season that's almost, 4,300 yards. Can he hit the, most TDs this season?
I think it's fairly likely. I have him projected as second on the board. I have him at 40 this year, with just behind Mahomes. So I think that's a decent bet there. The most passing yards bet, I believe that was plus 1,500 on Tipico. I don't love that one. I think there are a few different guys that I would rather take that bet on. But for the touchdown, I totally like. I really like. It's not Aaron Rodgers, but it's kind of related. The Devontae Adams, most touchdowns. I actually got him at plus 1,100 to lead the NFL in receiving touchdowns. And right after the Rodgers news, he shot up to plus 700, I believe. So it was one of those things we're just betting on Rodgers playing. Like we've seen it time and time again where an NFL player wants more money, they're unhappy, and then they sign a contract, and then they're playing. They're at training camp. So I totally agreed with you. I think that he was going to play the entire way. There was no way Rodgers was just retiring. It just was not going to happen coming off of an MVP season. He wants another Super Bowl. It was just so predictable. So I was totally in lockstep with you there.
Yeah. And he's not getting worse, right? His passer rating is only 1 point less than when he won his first MVP, which was in 2011. Like, we're talking about an entire 10 years later, where like 9 years later, whatever it is, where he's has the same passer rating. And that's a little bit unheard of. He's obviously a fantastic player, but we have to see how it happened. I don't know. I think there has to be some kind of disruption this year, but again, you're right. I did say that last year. So I don't know if that's going to end up being the case. I lied too, and we're going to talk about the Lions one more time. Let's talk about
my favorite.
Do you think that they're going to win the least amount of games? Those odds right now are 4-1 for the Lions. Houston's at 2-1. I don't think so, though. I think 2-1. It's not something I'm maybe throwing money on, but Houston's in a bad place. Like, at least with the Lions, your Lions, I'll give you. There's a little bit of structure that you can see. The pieces kind of make sense. Dan Campbell's a little bit of a fireball, but I think you can see a roster there. Whereas the Texans are like, I joked around, I tweeted the other day, like if the Bermuda Triangle was a football team, it would be the Houston Texans, right? Like they are the Bermuda Triangle. They just got Miller, which doesn't affect Mooney, but I think the Lions are okay. I'm not going to put money on the Lions to win the least amount of games.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I don't know. I will say they are in a fairly tough division. I would say, like, I don't think it's by far the best division in the NFL, but I don't think it's the worst. I think it's probably middle or even towards, the top end of it. But I think with this market, to be specific, there's some uncertainty in this one, right? With the Texans, obviously, all the stuff going on with Deshaun Watson, that's kind of, in my opinion, probably pushing that number for the Texans down to plus 200. So there is a lot of uncertainty in this market. So there's potentially a spot where you could get some value. I really like Trevor Lawrence, but the Jags at plus 1,000, they stand out a bit just in case, like, what if that just doesn't go right? Obviously, a new head coach, guy who hasn't been in the NFL before, brand new quarterback, rookie quarterback, it could go really well for them. there's a lot of uncertainty with the Jags this year. So at that number where it's plus 1,000 rather than the Lions at plus 400, you just get a little bit better value there.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And we'll wrap up on the Vikings, who you said you were high on. They finished the season at 7-9, or were they 8-8? No, that was the Bears. 7-9 Vikings. What is there to like? I'm a very big Jefferson person. I also very big on Dalvin Cook still. I don't care what anyone says. He hasn't moved in my rankings for a little bit, so I'm going to keep him there. What do you like specifically about these Vikings?
Yeah, again, it might be like that biased lens that I look through with what I do, but the skill position players are just phenomenal here. It's like, in my opinion, really hard to find a better trio of two receivers and a running back. But with Jefferson, Thielen, and then Dalvin Cook, obviously, there's just so much to love. And I think, so Kirk Cousins went to Michigan State. I'm a Michigan fan, so I was like born to not like Kirk Cousins. And I actually think he's fine. I think he does his job. He does have some upside weeks here and there, but just those three, Cook, Jefferson, Thielen, I think Irv Smith getting a bigger role is very appealing. I really like the offense, and I think the defense is going to be much improved this year as well.
Yeah. And Thielen's very slept on. Like, he's one of the most consistent wide receivers in fantasy. And he for some reason just gets ignored. Healthy guy and a fantastic, to have Thielen as your wide receiver 2 on a team is great. I'm also high on their tight end 2 this year. I'm not as high on Irv Smith as everyone else. I almost got, people were very angry when I brought that up this weekend. But I think that Rudolph, who we took over at the Giants, him leaving, I don't know that totally opens up things for Irv the way that he is talking about. But this is going to be a very fun bunch of teams to watch. Who do you think comes out with the win?
I do think it is the Packers. I think they're just a well-rounded group, obviously led by Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones. It's another phenomenal offense. And I kind of actually like some of the smaller additions that they've made as well. Amari Rodgers, a guy from Clemson, I think he's a very appealing option. Kind of, I don't want to compare him to Mecole Hardman because he doesn't quite have the same speed, but I think he has the same kind of game-breaking ability, and that's really big with Aaron Rodgers, that downplay threat. Not that way he doesn't have to throw to a guy like Marquez Valdez-Scantling who's going to drop every third pass. That guy's. I like Amari Rodgers.
Talk about he disappointed me for sure. And you guys got Amari St. Brown, right, on the Lions?
Yep.
I like him a lot. I was very high on him coming out of college. So I'm excited. This is just this is going to be a very fun division to watch. And I think the Lions are going to be okay. I mean, you guys aren't going to win, but you'll be okay to watch. I think we won't win, but we'll have fun. But I will let you go. I know you're jumping on a show right after this. Why don't you tell everyone what you're working on and where they can find you on Twitter?
Yeah, so staying busy this time of year with some of the season-long stuff. So my season-long projections are up now at ftnbets.com, so you can find all my player projections for that. You can find my fantasy football rankings at ftnfantasy.com, doing some MLB DFS stuff at ftndaily.com, and then right around the corner we'll have the NFL season where I'll be doing NFL daily content there as well.
I love it. So I'll have to have you back on during the season. We'll sign off. Thank you so much for coming on. I know your schedule, we're both very busy, so it's very nice that you were able to come on, and I'll have you on again.